In the gleaming lobby of the five-star hotel, the sound of high heels clicking against the marble floor is sharply contrasted by the soft scuff of worn-out shoes as the man steps inside. His disheveled appearance, stained jacket, frayed cuffs and scuffed shoes makes him an immediate anomaly in a space where every detail screams luxury. The staff behind the polished reception desk exchange uneasy glances, unsure of how to address him. The opulent decor of golden chandeliers, marble columns and polished floors all seem to mock his presence. As he walks past, some of the guests take a second glance, unsure whether he's a guest or an intruder. His eyes shift uncomfortably, trying to gauge where he might fit into this world that feels like a foreign land. He approaches the reception desk, hoping to get some kind of help or direction, but the receptionist barely looks up, absorbed in her conversation with a guest. She quickly gestures toward a lounge area, making it clear he's not to linger. His disappointment is palpable, but he doesn't give up. With a quiet sigh, he heads toward the back of the hotel, past the glimmering corridors, and enters an area far removed from the public eye, the kitchen. The moment he steps into the kitchen, the heat and the smell of food hit him, a sharp contrast to the cool, pristine environment of the lobby. The staff here works in harmony, moving about with precision, their focus solely on the tasks at hand. It's a different world, a more chaotic yet grounded world. Jack, the middle-aged cook, stands at the stove, stirring a large pot. His face is weathered but sharp, his eyes constantly scanning his surroundings. When he notices the man standing awkwardly in the doorway, he raises an eyebrow but doesn't stop stirring. His curiosity is piqued, and a quiet suspicion grows. This is no ordinary guest. The man hesitates for a moment before taking a few cautious steps forward. Jack doesn't say a word, but gives a nod, silently inviting him in. The stranger lowers his gaze, unsure of how to approach this stranger in such an intimate environment. With a soft cough, the man begins to speak, choosing his words carefully. He doesn't reveal much, just that he's fallen on hard times. The weight of his words feels heavy, but his eyes never meet Jack's directly, as if he's hiding something deeper, something Jack can't quite place. Jack watches, keenly aware of every small gesture the man makes, every pause in his speech. Jack's mind begins to race. There's something off about this man, something Jack can't quite put his finger on. He's not a tourist. Tourists don't dress like that. He's not a local either. Jack can't imagine what kind of circumstances could have brought someone so out of place into such a high-end hotel. The way the man's eyes shift nervously, the slight tremor in his hands, these details don't escape Jack's notice. Yet despite the growing suspicion, there's something else that compels Jack to offer a seat and listen. Maybe it's the raw vulnerability in the man's voice, or maybe it's just Jack's natural inclination to help. Without waiting for much of a response, Jack sets down the ladle and pours 2 cups of coffee, sliding one across the counter to the man. "You can talk to me. What's going on?" Jack's voice is firm, but not unkind. The man takes the cup, cradling it in his hands, the warmth of it contrasting with the cold tension in the air. He finally looks up at Jack, his eyes flickering with uncertainty. "I lost everything," the man mutters, his voice low and almost inaudible. Jack doesn't press him further but offers a sympathetic nod. It's a story he's heard countless times before, but there's something different about this one. There's a hidden layer in his words, something Jack feels in his gut. The man explains in a few fragmented sentences about losing his business, his wealth, and his place in the world. He doesn't go into specifics, leaving gaps in his narrative that Jack is too polite to question. Jack listens, absorbing every word, watching for any hint of dishonesty. But nothing about the man screams deceit. In fact, his vulnerability feels genuine, his humility authentic. And yet Jack's gut tells him there's more to this story, something buried under layers of complexity. The man looks down at the coffee, lost in thought, as Jack silently considers what to do next. Jack's decision to listen and offer help isn't born out of simple sympathy, but something deeper. There's an undeniable tension between them, a magnetic force that keeps them connected in this strange, intimate moment. Jack can't shake the feeling that this man, despite his brokenness, is somehow different from the others who wander through the hotel. He's not just any man in need. There's something more, something Jack can't yet define. What will happen next? Only time will tell. But for now, Jack can't help but offer his ear and perhaps his trust. Jack watches the man closely as he takes the food offered to him, his hands slightly trembling as he picks at the meal. The man's story is simple, yet heartbreaking. He speaks of a financial collapse that wiped out everything he worked for. Jack listens intently, nodding as the man recounts losing his company, his assets, and eventually his home. There's a sadness in his voice, a sense of helplessness that tugs at Jack's heart. But even as he hears the man's words, something about the whole situation feels off. The man's clothes, his mannerisms, the way he speaks. There's an air of too much performance, as if he's playing a role he's too skilled at. Jack, though empathetic, can't ignore the subtle nagging feeling in the back of his mind. As the man talks, Jack's attention shifts toward the kitchen. The rhythmic chopping of knives, the sizzling of food, and the constant motion of his staff form a sort of background hum. But it's the silence from the rest of the hotel's employees that catches his attention. They keep stealing glances at the man, murmuring behind his back. The staff members are whispering about the poor man, treating him like a curiosity rather than someone in need of genuine help. Jack can sense the judgment in the air, and the deeper he gets into the man's story, the more the walls around them seem to close in. The hotel, with its luxurious marble floors and golden chandeliers, now feels suffocating, as if the space itself is rejecting the man for being so out of place. As the conversation continues, Jack offers advice, drawing on his own experience in the kitchen and his struggles in life. He tells the man that sometimes you need to start small, focus on rebuilding from the ground up, and take things one day at a time. He speaks with sincerity, but the words feel hollow in the grand scheme of things. The hotel's golden glimmer continues to shine brightly, and Jack wonders if his words are enough to truly help. He watches the man intently as he listens, noting how his eyes remain focused, his face expressionless. Jack can't help but think that this man has heard such advice before, perhaps 100 times over, but now it feels like the man is fishing for something more, a different kind of guidance. And Jack realizes, almost reluctantly, that there's more at play here than just a poor soul seeking comfort. The man's posture changes slightly, and he begins to speak more candidly. He talks about feeling lost, not just financially, but emotionally. Jack can see that he's reaching for something, some kind of meaning in the disaster that befell him. Yet, with each word, the cracks in his story become more visible. There's a certain edge to his voice, an underlying tone that suggests there's more he's not saying. The man's demeanor shifts, and Jack begins to question whether this is truly a case of misfortune, or if he's dealing with someone who is trying to mask a more complex reality. The vulnerability is real, but there's something darker lurking just beneath the surface, something Jack can't quite place yet. Meanwhile, the hotel continues its busy operations, oblivious to the quiet drama unfolding behind the kitchen doors. Guests wander in and out, unaware of the mysterious guest in the back of the hotel. The staff members, who had initially been so intrigued by the man's presence, begin to fade back into their own routines. But Jack is still focused on the stranger. His suspicions grow with every passing moment. He can't ignore the fact that the man seems too polished for someone who has lost everything. His speech is eloquent, his body language confident, traits not typically associated with someone in financial ruin. Jack tries to reconcile the man's humble appearance with the subtle air of authority that lingers around him. Something isn't adding up. Despite the man's pleas for advice, Jack feels a growing sense of distance between them. The man is asking for something Jack doesn't fully understand, a way to deal with the uncertainty of his situation, a path forward. But Jack's experience has been different. He's worked hard, built his life from the ground up without shortcuts, and that's what he offers, the tough, gritty reality of working hard for every step. And yet, Jack can't shake the feeling that the man doesn't need that kind of advice. He's already made his choices, and there's something about him that makes Jack think he's testing the waters, seeing who will take the bait and who will see through the facade. As Jack watches the man finish his meal, he begins to question his role in this encounter. He's just a cook, a simple man who spends his days in the kitchen, far removed from the hotel's glittering surface. But here, in the quiet of the kitchen, he finds himself involved in something far more complex than a simple act of kindness. The man's presence is unsettling, and Jack can feel the weight of the mystery growing heavier with each passing minute. The man's story, his appearance, the way he carries himself, it all feels like an intricate puzzle that Jack is slowly piecing together. But there's a part of him that doesn't want to solve it. A part of him that wishes he could simply offer help without needing to understand the true nature of this stranger. Despite the disquiet that lingers in Jack's mind, he continues to engage with the man. He offers advice, even as his instincts scream that something is wrong. He offers help, but part of him is holding back, unsure of how deep this story really goes. As the man finishes his meal, Jack silently watches him, trying to read between the lines of his carefully constructed facade. It's a strange dance they're engaging in. Two men from different worlds, one trying to rebuild his life, and the other, unknowingly, being drawn into a web of deception. Jack can't help but wonder, who is this man really? And why does it feel like the answers are just out of reach? As the man takes his place in the kitchen, he begins to show an unexpected level of expertise. With a confident flair, he grabs a few ingredients from the pantry and effortlessly begins preparing a dish that makes the kitchen fall into a hushed silence. Jack watches closely as the man moves with ease, his hands steady and precise. His knife skills are flawless, each chop measured and perfect. The other cooks glance at each other in disbelief as the stranger assembles a sophisticated high-end dish, one that would impress even the most discerning of chefs. There's no hesitation, no struggle, just a smooth flow of practiced technique. Jack can't help but be impressed, though a nagging thought lingers in the back of his mind. Who is this man really? The kitchen, usually bustling with the noise of the staff, seems almost subdued now. The man's presence is commanding, and even the most seasoned cooks are watching with rapt attention. Jack stands off to the side, arms crossed, trying to gauge the true skill of the stranger. This dish is not something a mere novice would prepare. It's the kind of meal that would be served at Michelin-starred restaurants. But Jack's suspicions remain. How could someone who claims to have lost everything be so adept at such a specialized skill? It doesn't make sense. Jack decides to ask a few subtle questions, hoping to understand more about this mysterious man. "Where did you learn to cook like this?" Jack asks casually, his voice laced with genuine curiosity. The man looks up, offering a small smile, though his eyes betray a hint of wariness. "I worked in several high-end restaurants," the man replies, his voice steady, but there's a flicker of something in his eyes, an emotion that doesn't quite match the calm exterior. Jack presses further, asking about specific restaurants, famous chefs, even the city where the man worked. Each answer is measured, with the man detailing his career with surprising ease. He claims to have been one of the top chefs in the industry, working in renowned kitchens across the globe. His resume sounds too polished, too perfect, and yet Jack can't shake the feeling that something doesn't add up. As the man finishes plating the dish, Jack watches him with growing suspicion. The way the man talks about his past, without hesitation or doubt, seems rehearsed. It's almost as if he's trying to convince himself of something, not just Jack. Jack doesn't know why, but he feels that this man, with his flawless cooking skills and his smooth talk, isn't the down-on-his-luck person he claims to be. There's something else at play here. The revelation of his culinary expertise raises even more questions. How could someone with such skill be so destitute? Jack can't let go of the feeling that the man is hiding the true story behind his fall from grace. The man, finishing the dish, sets it aside and looks at Jack with an almost challenging gaze. It's as if he's daring Jack to question him further. The air between them thickens with unspoken tension. Jack, now more intrigued than ever, takes a breath and decides to push a little further. "So, what happened? If you were one of the best, how did it all go wrong?" he asks, his voice firm but not unkind. The man pauses, his expression momentarily darkening. He looks down at the dish, his fingers tracing the edge of the plate as if searching for the right words. When he speaks again, it's with a bitter edge to his voice. "I lost everything due to a terrible financial mistake," the man says, his words heavy with regret. "A bad investment. I thought I knew better, but it cost me everything, my business, my reputation, and my home." His gaze is distant, but the pain in his eyes is unmistakable. It's a story Jack has heard before, many times over, rich people losing everything due to poor decisions or bad luck. But this time, something about the man's tone makes Jack uneasy. There's a sharpness behind the words, a subtle defensiveness that makes it hard for Jack to fully believe what he's hearing. The man's downfall sounds too convenient, too tidy. Jack knows that real stories of ruin aren't so simple. Jack leans back slightly, his mind working furiously to piece together the puzzle. His instincts are screaming that the man is not telling the whole truth. Jack has been in the kitchen long enough to recognize talent when he sees it, and the man's skills are undeniable. But if he was truly one of the best, why had he fallen so far? Why would someone who could so effortlessly prepare a meal like this end up destitute? It doesn't make sense. Jack begins to suspect that the man's story is a carefully constructed narrative, one designed to gain sympathy, to lower people's guard. And yet, despite his growing skepticism, Jack can't bring himself to confront him directly. Part of him still wants to believe the man's tale, to offer him help, but another part of him is slowly growing wary. Despite his suspicions, Jack decides to continue helping the man, if only out of a sense of compassion. There's something about the man's vulnerability that draws Jack in, even as he wrestles with his growing doubts. Maybe deep down, Jack is hoping that his instincts are wrong, that the man really is just a casualty of bad luck, someone who deserves a second chance. But every moment spent in the kitchen with him only adds to Jack's unease. The pieces of the puzzle don't fit, and Jack starts to question whether he's helping a man in need or simply falling into the trap of someone with a hidden agenda. Regardless, Jack knows he's already involved now, and there's no turning back. As the last few moments of the encounter unfold, Jack can't help but feel the weight of his decision. By offering help, he's already taken a risk, one that could cost him his job or reputation if he's wrong. But something compels him to keep going, to dig deeper, even as the man's past becomes more shrouded in mystery. The truth is elusive, and Jack feels as if he's dancing on the edge of a cliff, unsure of where the next step will take him. But whatever happens, Jack knows that the man's secret will eventually be uncovered. It's only a matter of time. As the days pass, Jack and the mysterious man continue their unusual conversations in the quiet corners of the kitchen, away from the bustling hotel staff. Jack begins to feel a strange connection with the man. What started as simple curiosity now feels like something more, an unexpected camaraderie, a bond formed through shared meals and mutual respect for the art of cooking. The man, still careful with his words, begins to open up about his past in business. At first, it's small snippets, like pieces of a puzzle he's reluctant to fully reveal. But gradually, the man talks more freely, offering tidbits about his previous ventures in the business world, about startups he once ran, and about how everything once seemed so effortless. The stories the man shares are fascinating, filled with tales of risk, success, and failure. He speaks of grandiose plans that were once on the verge of changing industries, of high-stakes negotiations with powerful investors. Jack listens, captivated by the sheer scale of what the man once achieved. But as the man delves deeper into his narrative, Jack starts to notice the cracks, the way the man glosses over certain details, the way his tone shifts when discussing some of his failures. There's a hidden complexity in the way the man speaks, as though he's carefully crafting an image of himself that's not entirely true. Still, Jack can't help but be drawn in by the man's confidence and apparent knowledge. The way he talks about business with such authority makes Jack believe that this man could truly have been at the top. As their conversations continue, Jack finds himself questioning whether he's actually helping someone who genuinely needs assistance, or if he's simply helping a man who is navigating through a self-imposed challenge. Jack begins to see that despite the man's outward humility, there's an undeniable air of self-assurance about him. He speaks with the conviction of someone who has been in control of their destiny for years, and yet there's a hint of arrogance that Jack can't ignore. The more Jack listens, the more he begins to wonder if the man has engineered his fall from grace, or if his so-called downfall is just another calculated move in a long line of manipulations. Still, Jack can't shake the nagging feeling that he's caught in the web of a very complex individual. Despite his growing doubts, Jack finds himself drawn to the man's insights. He speaks about business with the kind of passion that only comes from real experience. In a way, Jack starts to admire the man's ability to talk about financial strategies and management techniques, even if some of his stories feel too polished to be entirely genuine. Jack finds himself asking more questions, testing the waters, trying to figure out just how much the man is willing to reveal. The more they talk, the more Jack begins to see the cracks in the man's facade, little moments where his overconfidence slips, revealing a more vulnerable side. The man talks about failure with a certain bitterness, as though it's still fresh, still something he hasn't fully come to terms with. As Jack listens, he begins to realize that the man isn't just a former businessman who fell on hard times. There's something deeper going on, something more intentional. He starts to see that the man's humility is not a result of genuine loss, but a carefully constructed narrative that he's telling others. Jack starts making mental notes about the man's behaviors, the subtle shifts in his posture when he talks about his wealth, the glint of pride in his eyes when he talks about his former successes. Jack becomes more and more convinced that the man is playing a role, not just for Jack's benefit, but for everyone around him. But why? Why go through all of this? And what does the man really want from Jack? As the man reveals more about his business failures, Jack notices how he chooses his words carefully, often skipping over the difficult parts and focusing instead on his moments of success. He speaks of a great investment that fell apart, but the details are vague. He talks about a business partner who betrayed him, but the man's tone is so calculated, so controlled, that Jack starts to wonder if the betrayal was as much a result of the man's own choices as it was of anyone else's. There's a certain arrogance in the way the man talks about his fall, as if it's just another chapter in a grand story he's creating. Jack is beginning to realize that he might not be dealing with a man who's lost everything, but with someone who is attempting to reinvent himself, to create a new narrative where he's the victim. Over time, Jack becomes more and more perplexed by his growing relationship with the man. On the one hand, he still feels a sense of camaraderie, an unspoken bond that has developed between them. But on the other hand, Jack is beginning to feel like he's being manipulated, pulled into a game he doesn't fully understand. The man's charm, his expertise, and his confidence are compelling, but Jack starts to see them as masks, hiding something more dangerous underneath. He begins to question whether the man really wants to rebuild his life, or if he's simply playing the part of a fallen hero to see who will help him rise again. Jack feels trapped in this delicate dance, unsure whether he's helping a man in need or being led down a path he shouldn't be on. The more Jack observes, the more he starts to distance himself emotionally from the man. While he continues to listen and offer advice, there's a growing wariness in his actions. He becomes more cautious with his words, more skeptical of the man's motivations. There's a part of Jack that still wants to believe in the man's story, to believe in the possibility of redemption. But there's also a growing part of him that wonders if this entire situation is an elaborate setup, if he's been drawn into a scheme that he doesn't fully understand. As their friendship deepens, so does the mystery surrounding the man, and Jack can't help but wonder how much longer he can keep his own doubts at bay. The grand event at the hotel is in full swing, and the kitchen is buzzing with activity. The staff is working in perfect unison, preparing for the evening's high-profile guests. Jack, focused on his station, doesn't expect the man to approach him. But there he is, standing at the edge of the kitchen, a look of mild distress on his face. He asks Jack for help with a small but critical issue involving one of the dishes. At first, Jack thinks it's just another small mistake, something that can be easily fixed with a little attention. But when the man insists that Jack take control, it becomes clear that there's more to this request than meets the eye. The problem is straightforward. A minor issue with one of the sauces that needs quick adjustment. But as Jack works, he notices the way the man watches him, not with gratitude, but with an odd intensity. It's as if he's waiting for something, waiting for Jack to do more than simply solve the problem. The man's presence seems to loom over Jack, silently challenging him. It doesn't take long for Jack to realize that this isn't just about fixing the sauce. It's a test. The man is not here to blend in. He's looking for an opportunity to prove himself, to show that he's capable of more than just following orders. Jack feels a surge of irritation, the familiar tension of someone pushing too hard. He's spent enough time in the kitchen to recognize when someone is trying to assert dominance, and that's exactly what this feels like. The man is trying to insert himself into a place he doesn't belong, using Jack as a stepping stone to elevate his position. As Jack prepares the sauce, he challenges the man, not directly, but through his actions. He wants to see how far the man is willing to go, whether he'll try to manipulate the situation further or accept his place in the kitchen. The tension between them grows, thickening the air in the otherwise controlled environment. Jack turns to face the man, his eyes narrowing. "You want more than just help, don't you?" he says, his voice cool, almost calculating. The man's gaze flickers for a moment before he responds, his tone steady, but tinged with something that almost sounds like pride. "I'm just trying to help where I can," he says, his words laced with a subtle defensiveness. Jack watches him closely, sensing that the man is treading a fine line between humility and arrogance. It's as if he's testing Jack, trying to see how much he can get away with. But Jack isn't fooled anymore. The man's apparent humility is just another layer, a mask he wears to hide his true intentions. Jack presses on, wanting to push the man's limits. "If you want to be part of this team, you need to show me more than just words. You need to prove that you belong here, not by trying to overshadow everyone else, but by contributing. You can't just hide behind your past, no matter how impressive it might be." The man's face tightens, but his response is controlled. "I'm not trying to overshadow anyone," he says, though the tension in his voice betrays him. The way he speaks, the way he positions himself, all suggest that he's still trying to make an impression. Jack isn't sure what the man is really after, but one thing is clear: he's not as humble as he wants Jack to believe. The more they interact, the more Jack begins to notice subtle shifts in the man's demeanor. There's an air of calculated confidence in the way he speaks, a certain cool detachment that doesn't match the persona of a man trying to rebuild his life. The more Jack listens, the more he realizes that the man isn't really looking for help. He's looking for control. Jack feels a flicker of doubt. Has he been helping someone who truly needs it, or has he been manipulated into aiding a man who's playing a much larger game? The man's calm demeanor now seems like a carefully constructed act, and the cracks are starting to show. As the situation in the kitchen escalates, Jack's irritation turns to suspicion. The man is not the person Jack thought he was. His apparent need for help was nothing more than an opening, a way to insert himself into the hotel's hierarchy. Jack begins to question everything he's been told about the man's past. Was the man truly a fallen businessman? Or had he been carefully orchestrating his downfall as part of a much bigger scheme? There's a feeling of betrayal growing within Jack as he realizes that he's been played. The man's kindness was just a tactic, a means of gaining trust and sympathy. The more Jack sees through this, the more he feels the walls closing in around him. The tension reaches its peak when the man steps forward, his voice firm and confident. "I didn't come here to be overlooked," he says, his eyes locking with Jack's. "I came here to show you that I'm more than just a fallen chef. I'm a man who can still rise, and I'll do whatever it takes to make it back to the top." The words hit Jack like a punch to the gut. The man's true intentions are now clear. This isn't just about redemption. It's about control, power, and ambition. Jack feels a pang of disappointment, realizing that he's been part of something much darker than he had initially thought. His help was never truly wanted. It was only ever a stepping stone for the man to climb back to the top. The large business meeting is in full swing, the grand hotel ballroom filled with corporate elites, their voices murmuring as they discuss high-stakes investments and future projects. Jack, still in the kitchen, hears the buzz of the event from behind the closed doors. But something feels different today. As the meeting progresses, Jack notices the mysterious man, once a seemingly humble, destitute individual, stepping into the room with newfound confidence. He's no longer just the guest seeking help. Now, he's a dominant figure at the table, his posture erect, his voice commanding the attention of the room. His tone carries authority, and Jack can hardly believe the transformation. This isn't the same man he's been helping. From the kitchen's back door, Jack watches the man as he confidently participates in the meeting, making bold statements about investments, business strategies, and even leading discussions on potential acquisitions. He's not just another attendee, he's taking charge, his expertise and leadership unshakable. Jack's suspicion deepens with each passing moment. This man, who had once claimed to have lost everything, is now acting as if he's always been in control. The air around him exudes a level of power and influence Jack hadn't realized before. This display of confidence sends a chill down Jack's spine, and he realizes that the man was never truly helpless. He had been playing a role the entire time. As the meeting breaks for lunch, the man approaches Jack in the kitchen. The casual demeanor he once wore has shifted into something more calculated. His eyes meet Jack's with a knowing look, almost as if he's been waiting for this moment. "I imagine you've been wondering about me," the man says, his voice calm but heavy with intent. Jack doesn't respond immediately, his heart pounding in his chest, as he senses that this is the moment when everything will finally make sense. The truth, which has been hanging in the air like a thick fog, begins to clear. The man has known all along that Jack was the one person who showed him kindness without any judgment. Jack's suspicion was right. This man had not lost everything, but had orchestrated his downfall for a specific reason. The man continues, revealing his true identity as a major investor who controls several high-end businesses. He had feigned poverty, pretending to be a fallen chef, to see how people would treat him. "I needed to know who would help, who would look at me with true compassion, without the veil of status," the man explains, his eyes intense with sincerity. Jack's heart races as the weight of the revelation settles on him. Everything he had believed about the man was a lie, a carefully constructed narrative designed to test others, to test Jack himself. And Jack had passed the test, offering help without hesitation or judgment. The realization stings, but there's something else in the man's eyes, a strange mixture of gratitude and something deeper, more complex. The man doesn't stop there. As if sensing Jack's disbelief, he offers further explanation. "Out of everyone here, out of all the staff, you were the only one who didn't see me as a charity case. You saw me for what I was, and you helped, not because of who I was, but because of who you are. That's rare, and it's something that people like me rarely get to experience. Jack stands there, processing the man's words, trying to make sense of the complex emotions swirling within him. He feels a mixture of anger, betrayal, and confusion. But underneath it all, there's a strange sense of respect. The man's actions, however manipulative, had led to something authentic between them. A connection forged through kindness, no matter how misguided. And then the final twist comes. The man looks at Jack with a different kind of gaze, one that is not calculating but rather filled with genuine appreciation. "I'm offering you a new position," he says, his voice firm yet almost gentle. "A prestigious job with a salary you could never have imagined. A chance to join my team, work with me directly and take your career to the next level." Jack is taken aback, his mind reeling with the sudden turn of events. This is the last thing he had expected. He had thought the man would offer him money out of guilt, or maybe even leave the hotel for good, but instead he's offering Jack something much more valuable. A chance to leave the kitchen and enter the world of high-stakes business, a world Jack has always admired but never thought he'd belong to. Jack stands there in stunned silence, his thoughts racing. The job offer is enticing, more than anything he could have imagined. The financial reward is substantial, a life-changing sum that could solve all his financial worries. But as the weight of the man's offer sinks in, Jack feels a pang of discomfort. The man's kindness was never truly selfless. It was a tool, a means to an end. The offer is genuine, but so too is the manipulation that came with it. Jack realizes that for all the good he thought he saw in the man, this moment has revealed a much darker side of his nature. A side that used kindness as a currency to get what he wanted. Jack now stands at a crossroads, unsure of whether to accept the offer or walk away from the man's web of manipulation. As the man waits for Jack's response, there's a long silence that hangs between them, thick with unspoken words. Jack's mind spins, torn between the life-changing opportunity and the bitterness of being part of the man's grand plan. The man stands there, unmoving, his expression unreadable but patient. Jack realizes that he is no longer just a cook in a hotel kitchen. He is at the center of a much bigger game. The question is no longer whether Jack will take the offer, but whether he can live with the knowledge that his decision will come with consequences far greater than he ever anticipated. Jack stands there, the weight of the decision heavy on his shoulders. The offer in front of him, money, power, and a chance to change his life, calls to him like a siren song. He could walk away from the kitchen, from the life he knows, and step into a world of luxury and influence. The possibilities are endless, but as he listens to the man's words, a sense of clarity begins to settle within him. He realizes that this offer, though tempting, comes with a cost. It isn't just a job offer, it's a choice between the man's world of manipulation and his own world of hard-earned pride. Jack looks at the man, knowing deep down that true fulfillment lies in remaining true to himself. The man watches him closely, his expression unreadable but expectant. "You've passed the test," he says, his voice low, almost as if he's speaking to himself. But it wasn't just about seeing who would help. It was about seeing who could maintain their integrity, no matter the reward. Jack listens, the words sinking deep into his heart. The man has already proven his point. He doesn't need to test Jack anymore. He's seen the cook's worth, not through his abilities or his past, but through his choices, his actions, and his authenticity. Jack understands that the man didn't offer him the job just for the money. He wanted to see what Jack would do when faced with an opportunity that could have changed his life forever. For a moment, Jack stands in silence, processing the magnitude of the offer and the meaning behind the man's words. The chance to escape his humble existence, to become something more, is right there in front of him. But Jack knows in his heart that wealth, power, and prestige are not the true measures of success. What truly matters is the kind of person you are when no one is watching, the character you maintain when faced with temptation. Jack thinks of the kitchen, the clatter of dishes, the heat, the satisfaction of a well-cooked meal. The pride he feels when a dish comes together perfectly, not because of the ingredients, but because of the hard work and dedication that went into it. In that moment, he makes his choice. With a calm resolve, Jack looks the man in the eyes. "Thank you for the offer," he says, his voice steady but sincere. "But I've worked hard for everything I have, and that's something I'm proud of. I can't walk away from that." The man's gaze softens, and Jack can see the hint of respect in his eyes. There's no judgment, no disappointment, only a quiet understanding. Jack realizes that this decision, though it might seem small in the grand scheme of things, is the one that will define him. His humility and integrity are his greatest rewards, and no amount of money or prestige could replace that feeling of inner peace. The man nods, clearly moved by Jack's decision, and without a word he turns and walks away from the hotel. As the man leaves the hotel, Jack stands for a moment watching him go. The weight of the offer has been lifted, and Jack feels a profound sense of relief. He knows that he's made the right choice. In that moment, Jack understands that true wealth is not measured in dollars or titles, but in the authenticity of one's actions. The man had set out to test his integrity, and in doing so, had given Jack a powerful lesson in what truly matters. Jack may not have accepted the millionaire's offer, but he's gained something far more valuable: the knowledge that his own character, his humility, and his integrity are the true rewards of life.